The idea is to go as fast as you can, but still go through the tightest corners without touching the brakes. After starting the lap timer at the overlooked turnout, this is the first big sweeper. About the music and no engine sound. I was listening to Rare Earth and forgot about YouTube's music policy, so I had to delete it and replace it. Music and engine sound with royalty-free music. Yep, you saw that right, a bicycle. These guys and gals are monsters, as this road has some big gradients which makes for a hard up, but a giggle down. You can see the shock is making for a pretty rough ride, as the bike is bouncing around pretty good, and the road is actually in pretty good shape. I will adjust it for a better feel and smoother ride. Remember, it only has a couple of 100 miles on it so far. About the road. I cannot tell you or I'd have to kill you. You may be able to figure it out, but I am not divulging the name of this special secret road. This downhill right-hander always scares the hell out of me, until you get into it and say to yourself, darn, I could have gassed it. There is a lot of Armco fencing, so you got to be very, very careful. The alternative is if there's no Armco there and you go off the road, you may never stop falling. Is the only wet spot, and it is always wet. It's an underground spring, so I always try to straighten up and roll through it. Then, the slowest corner on the whole 10-mile ride, I am always careful here looking for gravel. I would rather go a little slower and keep the bike up. Cars, cops, lumber trucks. You just saw a couple of cars and there are not that many, but you really need to pay attention. This is a very out-of-the-way place for cops to come, but sometimes people complain about the motorbikes and they will make a run out every so often. On your turnaround at the bridge, they have a no stopping sign posted. Lumber trucks? Now that's a whole nother problem. They drive like NASCAR drivers and can back it up. The secondary issue is the bark that falls off on the road. So my little baby, the RS457, has less than 200 miles on it right now, and I am doing two things here. Breaking it in, and I am relearning the road again after not being out here for some time. This is pretty much the high point on the ride. Now we drop down into a valley and the bridge. The bridge. This is our turnaround. The rider behind me was there for a couple of miles and was very nice to have waited for me to pull over. Then he lit the afterburners. The ride back to the overlook can be more fun than the ride out, as all of the lefts are now right and all the ups are now down. Here we are coming up to the slowest turn again. You can see it looks completely different the other way. Also, that wet spot is still there, and there's a lot of moss and stuff there, so it can be very slippery. I take full advantage of the road to keep the bike level. Here's that bicyclist again. He's the same guy I passed on the way out. When I passed him before, he was doing probably 50 miles an hour or more. Right now, he's on a climb, maybe doing 10 miles an hour. Either way, they're bad guys and gals. Almost back to the starting point. I want to stress this is not a road race or anything. I'm just showing you the road, and you have to be aware of cars, bicyclists, trucks, and especially animals and stuff. But this is a great course to go on. If you have any questions or anything, please feel free to make a comment. We started out on that big sweeper. Now we're coming back through it the other way and slowing down a little bit. The timer will go off as we pass the overlook turnout. And that's another point to make. We just went almost 20 miles with no driveways on either side. Pretty cool.